internal clutch killing that power for you. And there's lots of power! Oh, thank Oh my lord! So much power! Holy Oh boy, that was crazy.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is. Oh man.
That video totally made me remember that weekend. Yeah.
Same.
Kyle, your squeal reminds me of how it felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it brought back some good memories.
It's a giggle-inducing thing.
Oh yeah. Is this live? Do we know?
It says live.
Yeah,
Yep.
it does say live.
Yep. Oh yeah, Nick says yep.
Oh, you guys can see people in there?
Yeah, Nick is here, and somebody else.
Okay, cool. We'll just wait a couple seconds because I can't see that weirdly. I can't tell if there's anyone here. But if we're live, we're live. We'll wait a couple minutes and then I'll introduce it when there's a few more people here. Because there was a bunch of people and then I think we lost them technically.
Nick says we're good.
It's official. I trust Nick. Oh, 54 people. Oh my God.
We're famous.
I'm shriveling up.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, guys, thanks for everyone for showing up and welcome to the live. We're hosting at the legendary Chuck Harder shop. And who is in the room with us is Anthony, who is basically the Wizard of Oz. He's behind the curtain trying to make sure that this runs as seamlessly as possible. The legendary Chuck Harder, who you can see. Aquaman, aka Kyle, who you can also see. And myself, Dallas, from the Traction eRag. So you'll have to excuse my voice and my look because I have the plague and I am being kept in a leper colony off-grid and isolated so I don't get these guys sick. So I'm sort of phoning into this one. And the vibe, as always, here is we strive to be ourselves and you guys be yourselves. It's super informal and we want to set up a feeling in a situation where you guys feel like you're in the shop with us and we can talk normally if that's possible. The purpose of this is, unless you live under a rock, you know that EVs or electric vehicles are coming. We all know that intellectually, but until we actually had an electric dirt bike under our butts, that's a completely different feeling. So we wanted to do this chat because it blew our minds. Everyone here is a dirt biker most of their lives, and riding electric dirt bikes just cracked open a whole bunch of things in our mind that we didn't even think about or know that was there. So we're going to talk about some of those things today. A big shout out to Outlaw Motorsports and Kamloops. They were the ones that gave us the bikes, and the bikes that we had for I think 4 days. It was like a long weekend. They gave them to us on maybe Thursday and we'd return them Monday or Tuesday. It's two Surons. So the Suron Ultra B and the Ultra B Suron, just so you know, or if you don't know, Suron has 3 electric dirt bikes in their lineup. The Suron Ultra B is the medium one, so it's in the middle. It's a little bit undersized. Then we had the Suron Storm B, which is a full-size dirt bike. These are both, in my opinion, trail bikes, and most people know the name Suron by now. They were first into the market, and they're definitely making inroads. And then The final thing we had a Stark Varg. Outlaw Motorsports, they do Sur-Ron and Stark Varg. They have them in-house. So the Stark Varg is a Spanish full-size motocross bike. When I say full-size, I feel like it's truly a full-size bike. Like when you swing your leg over that, it feels like you're on a real motocross bike. Stark Varg, just so you know, is Swedish for wolf, because I wondered what that was. What is Stark Varg? And it's Swedish for the word wolf. So without further ado, let's talk about the future. Oh, I know what we're going to talk about. So Kyle, you can open up. When you got on the bikes for the first time, what's the thing that like immediately you made you go WTF?
The lack of any kind of sound, like aside from motor sound, but like mechanical, any kind of sound.
Is this the first time you've ever ridden an electric bike?
Yes.
Okay, so you've never ridden on anything electric
No,
before? Okay.
nothing.
I have, so it's a little different.
Yeah. So having that that zero sound, and then you're questioning, is everything on? Is it on? Is it on? And then you touch the throttle, and yeah, it's on. And then you take off, and you can hear the electric motor a bit, and you hear the chain, but it's just building power, and it's otherworldly.
How about you, Chuck?
Well, I've ridden electric bikes before. I've ridden a whole bunch of EMs. So back when I worked at Lang's Off Road in Ontario, I rode lots of electric trials bikes. And then also when I was at Outliers, I got to ride the new EM, which has a clutch, but it's still a trials bike, or based off a trials bike. So I was used to how the electric power comes on and how sudden and how responsive it is. But the Stark Varg doesn't feel like anything like any other electric bike than I've ever ridden. The Sur-Rons, it was like I was with the Ultra B. It was pretty similar to like kind of the long range. Their EM's trail bike is very similar to that. The Storm B was bigger and heavier than the EMs that I was used to, but the Stark Varg, it's a whole different category. Like the Stark Varg, like you said, it's a real dirt bike. It feels like a motocross bike. The typical characteristics that I would expect when I get on a motocross bike, so like tall, stiff, rigid, aggressive, bars rolled back, 19-inch wheel, all of that, narrow seat, all that stuff is exactly what the Stark Varg is.
Cool. For me, my experience is similar to Chuck in the sense that I have ridden EM early versions. I think maybe version 1 of the EM. I had that for like a month, and I was amazed. I learned lots. That was really early. That was probably when 2013, Chuck.
I don't know when the first EM was, but probably.
So I do have some experience, which I've forgotten. That's years ago. But for me, when I swung my leg over that electric bike this time, I immediately was confused because I didn't understand how to turn it on. Like it just nothing made sense. The controls made no sense. Am I still here? I think we're having a
Yep.
technical.
Yeah, you got
Okay,
a
we're
little
good.
glitch, but you're back.
Okay. So I looked down at the foot pegs, and there's no controls at your feet, which was weird. And then I realized that the front and rear brake are your hands, and then it started to make sense. But like that was like immediately jarring, and I was super happy.
So you didn't have any coaching like on the bike? The bike just kind of showed up, and like nobody told you how to ride it?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I felt the same way when I got on the Stark Varg. Just like, oh man, there's still no foot controls at all. The brakes are in your hands, and that makes me happy for lots of reasons that I'm sure we'll discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, speaking of controls, that was my big jarring thing. So let's talk about controls. It's basically like a bicycle set up like a dirt bike. So your rear brake is on your left hand, and your front brake is on your right hand. And what did you think? Because for dirt bikers, that's a big departure from normalcy.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
It is definitely a little different. It's obviously nice, like the front brake is still in the same spot. So, and that's the really critical one that you don't want to accidentally grab. So that was good, but yeah, it definitely did take a little bit to get used to for the lack of foot controls, both with the brake and the shifting. Like if you were getting a little hot and heavy and you came into a corner and you weren't thinking about it, you might go for the rear brake and blow the corner because you missed that 1 second window where you had to be on the brake.
Right, Chuck? How about you?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this. And well, I feel like the place to start is that I did not have much trouble getting used to the rear brake being at my left hand. Like Kyle said, like at first, in a bit of a panic situation, yeah, a bunch of times, like my foot went down and the bike didn't stop.
Instinct.
Yeah. When lizard brain takes over, then yeah. But that's just a bit of muscle memory, and I'd say like towards the end of a full day of riding, it was like I was getting used to it, and I was starting to get to the point where I could modulate the rear brake with my finger, and that is a definite advantage, I would say.
So I'm about to pull my pants down.
Again,
Most people don't know this, but I have been riding a left-hand rear brake since probably 2012
with no clutch.
with no clutch whatsoever. And that's a long story that I don't want to get into right now. I will, of course, but not now. I will tell that story. I'm planning on making a video about that because I've always believed when I made that transition to a left-hand rear brake. Now, I needed a recluse clutch, so that's part of that equation. But I have had no rear brake lever on my bike since 2013. I'll say 13, I think. So riding like that for so long, it made me realize that these fine motor skill things up here attached to our wrists are excellent at modulating front and rear brake.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that in the electric bikes, I thought, oh, the future is going to be brakes on the handlebars, both brakes. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the truth or not. Like that's going to get shaken out over the next, I don't know, 5 years. And maybe EM have already figured out the way it's going to go. I don't know. But yeah, I was super happy. I love my rear brake on my left hand because it's more precise. And when I'm turning to the right, I don't have to worry about a thing because I have my left hand rear brake right there. So yeah, I was super gloaty and pleased to see those levers there. Whether I'm going to be right long term, who knows? But that was my opinion about the controls.
Well, we might as well do just like set up a wager right now, because I don't think it's going to be that way in the future, and I know you love that the left hand rear brake and no clutch thing, but I think that motorcycles have evolved this way for a set of complex reasons that most of us don't know or understand. And like when I think about European bikes, like the early Bultacos or like the Nortons, some of a lot of the British bikes, they had a shifter on the right, and some of them had GP shift, but everything kind of morphed into what we have today. And I think that there are reasons for the controls being the way that they are beyond what we normally think about.
Yeah, Kyle, what about you for controls? Any comments?
I after some riding for a bit, I was pretty used to it, and I feel like if you've spent a bit of time, like we only had a day on it, and I felt like I was getting used to it. So if I had the bike in my possession for long term or actually owned it, then I don't think it would be an issue for me. I felt like I was liking the way that we were riding, which wasn't super technical. It was pretty open and flowy stuff. I liked my feet being nice and planted. I didn't have to shuffle them around for shifting, and because we don't even think about it, but when we're shifting and braking, we're shuffling our feet around a bit, and
our whole leg, really.
yeah, exactly. So having that planted feeling all the time, and like you had said, I think Dallas about or one of you about dragging the rear brake a bit, like not even letting off the gas fully or grabbing the brake fully, but just slowing down that rear tire a bit with the brake, even if you are still a little bit on the gas. I felt like it helped you change directions. Like you can reel it in and pivot, not the right way to say it, but pivot on the rear end, kind of, because the rear end is pulling you back, slowing you down, but not locking up.
So in this wager, because I assume that Chuck, you're on this will evolve to having a clutch. And then Kyle, what's your on the wager? Where are you? Like the future of this, what's it going to look like?
Well, for the type of riding that I think that we like to do, I think that it needs some sort of a clutch and foot brake, because even when we did a little bit of log hopping there was a moment that scared me. We were hopping this log and then landing into a bit of a clearing, and then there's trees on the other side of the clearing. Well, when I landed off of the big log, big jump, and came down, and a little snap of the throttle, normally I would have my fingers always on the clutch, and I would have just killed that power with the clutch, and it would have been non-issue, never would have talked about it, thought about it, anything. But in this instance, that's not there, and that little blip of throttle on the Stark Varg was a lot of power, and next thing you know, you're 10 feet, 20 feet further than you thought you were, and you're getting close to those trees. So I feel like it needs a way to reel in that power, because I think it can, like the Stark Varg, I feel like you could probably power through the rear brake on it if you grabbed a handful of throttle.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that you'd reel it in with the brake.
Not a chance. 80
No.
horsepower, not a chance. Well, even if in a more realistic situation where you had it toned down in the woods to about 50 horsepower, you still, I'm sure you still couldn't. You might slow it down.
Probably turn it right down, and you might still be able to power through. It won't ramp up as fast, but
yeah, because there's so much torque right off the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and those pads are so tiny.
I think it's a complicated issue, and I do agree with you, Chuck, in the sense that evolution has shown us what the answer is, which is the current dirt bike setup. But I'm going to actually sit on the fence and go in the middle, which is going to be super frustrating. But
you can't go in the middle. If you can go in the middle, then I can go in the middle.
But here's
I have a reason. Hang out on the fence like a bunch of birds.
Yeah.
No, I have a reason though, because what I think is going to happen, and I have a bit of an advantage, if you want to call that, because I've been riding a left-hand rear brake for years and years and years and years. So what I do, I use my left-hand rear brake like a clutch, in the sense that I can load the bike and I can do different things. Now, in a very technical situation for technical riders, I think that a clutch is going to be warranted and demanded and necessary. But I think for trail riders who aren't doing a lot of technical stuff, or they're just doing just normal dirt bike riding, whatever that is, I think what's going to happen is the manufacturer is going to send you that bike drop ship to your door, probably, where you just put the handlebars on. That's probably the future. And you're going to have the option to install some sort of clutch. So I think maybe that will be like an option. If you want to pay extra for some sort of a clutch, then you'll get that. But I think it'll be optional.
I think so too. Now I think, like, so I've had a few conversations with people on social media about different ideas and whatnot, and there have been some really, really interesting ideas, like some type of an electronic device that, like, you don't need to use the clutch at all, but you can use it, so it's electronic. I've talked about, some people have had the idea that, because for the majority of people, you don't need the clutch until you need basically wheel spin. Like, I mean, I guess you can get wheel spin, but basically, the difference between traction control and a clutch. So some people are like, well, just put traction control on it, but you can't just put traction control on, because sometimes a lot of times you want wheel spin. So you could have a clutch that when you pull it in, it's wheel spin mode, so it turns traction control off. Now, I think it would be super cool if it was an electronic lever, and you could toggle and choose whether you want that lever to be a clutch or whether you want it to be a rear brake. And I mean, that might be too expensive. It might be cost prohibitive, but I think it wouldn't be very hard to manufacture. I mean, there's already fly-by-wire throttles and whatnot, electronic, all that type of stuff. So that's not super hard to overcome. But basically, a little device inside that, when you toggle it, it'll either do clutch or it'll do rear brake, one of the two. So you can, on the fly, you can choose, do I want this rear brake or do I want it clutch? So those probably more advanced riders are going to choose clutch. And less advanced, like probably up till intermediate riders would probably choose the rear brake. But then the question is an electronic clutch or is it a real clutch? And I think a real clutch is actually warranted. And in some situations, I don't think that's ever really going to go away totally.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way it's going to evolve, because if you look at almost every consumer-based situation, everything is getting segmented down to get exactly what you want, and there's all kinds of choices. And when they start drop shipping and cutting out middlemen, they're going to have the ability, I think, financially, economically, to do those types of things. So that's probably where it's going to go. Now, I feel like we're really going down a deep hole here on levers, and I don't want to spend too long doing this. Go ahead, Kyle.
I have one more thing to add there.
Okay.
One of my thoughts on the clutch with the electric, and I can't be the first one to think of this, is on our normal dirt bikes, I talk about you're not always taking away all the power with the clutch. You're just modulating your power. And say you set your throttle and that throttle would normally give you 30 horsepower, but you only need 20. So you're modulating with your clutch. So what if the electric bikes, if they had an electronic lever, and it just dumbed down the power to the point where if you pulled it all the way in, it's no power, because the electric motors make torque instantly. So as soon as you let it out, it would be like the bike's already spooled up because it already makes power instantly. So if your lever just kind of modulated the power output, like overriding, I guess you could kind of say, overriding the throttle. I wonder how that would do. Because like for me on that instance where I hopped the log and landed, if that was the case, I would have killed power no matter what my throttle was doing, and life would have been grand.
And that's super cool. But then you can't have a left-hand rear brake.
Right. So then but then like we were saying, you need the pedal.
So you could have an option. Like I like that idea. You can have an electronic clutch like that, and I'm sure with a bit of R&D, it could get really, really good.
Yeah.
And you could toggle from an electronic clutch to a hydraulic rear brake.
Yeah.
Or maybe an electric rear brake. Who knows?
Bluetooth
rear brake.
So before we get trapped, I have one thing to say about the lever situation. Damon is in the comments. He made a good comment about the idea that a synthetic clutch, and that's sort of like, I think that traditionalists are going to have a difficult time with EVs if they're stuck on tradition and dogma. But if you're open-minded, who cares if it's synthetic, if it's electronic, if it's fly-by-wire? It doesn't make any difference. So we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to not talk about levers anymore, unless there's a really good question.
I have one more point.
What the hell is an eRag? Oops! Hello, ladies.
Well, we don't have this technology in Europe. We just piss ourselves.
Well, this looks a little weird.
Two of them make up the ingredients for a soul casserole. I'm so excited, I've just wet myself again.
Traction eRag.
Digital magazine called the Traction eRag.
So what is an eRag? For a decade, we published a trashy magazine called the eRag. E for electronic, and rag, because that's what you call a trashy, waste of time magazine. We filmed Graham Jarvis and Colton Haker together with our pals, Larry and Paul, two inspirational riders in their 70s. We put on rides, lots of rides.
I'm here in beautiful British Columbia for Grizzbait, a week-long dirt bike riding extravaganza that I might just survive.
Oh my God! Wow! Grizzbait, Big Rock Candy Mountain, Recon Run, Zero to Hero, Woods Runners, Parch Canucks, and that's just to name a few. We continue to host our shenanigans for one reason. We're proud of Canada, and I want to show you this country, our version of this country, which is rural, sincere, real. We've applied our experience in university-level sports education to dirt bike skills. We break down skills into separate components. Each skill builds on the next. We're really proud of the curriculum we've refined over a decade of teaching. So what do you think? Come play with us in the BC mountains and we will show you the time of your life.
Yeah. Come riding with us. We're doing stuff in the spring, as that just said. 80% full on most of the weeks, but if you're interested, now's your chance. So Chuck, we're gonna not dig to China, but go ahead. One more thing about the levers.
Okay. So manufacturers, and a lot of what happens in the sport is driven by racing. And safety is a huge factor. And I don't know exactly, but I have a feeling that's probably a lot of what happened with Tadej Blasuziak not racing the Varg. And I have a feeling that some of the other manufacturers may have been complaining about the safety of not having a clutch and the fact that you can lay the Varg down on the throttle side, jam some dirt in there, and that 80 horsepower potentially can, the bike will run on its side and there's no clutch to grab. If that throttle is sticking wide open, you have zero safety.
Mm-hmm. I agree with both of you that there will be something implemented for that crowd for sure. And I don't know if this analogy makes any sense, but when cars first appeared, I'm sure all the horseback riders didn't like it because they couldn't steer with their ass cheeks. So I feel like there will be some us humans will have to go through some adaptation, if that's the right word, when we get on EVs. I mean, you both, Kyle especially, because he was an electric virgin. So Kyle hopping onto that bike, he said he made the adjustment in about a day. But we're going to talk about that too, because I have a great story about what happened when we went riding that day to film. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we'll leave the lever thing alone for you guys, because I know we're nerding out really hard on this, but we will all agree if we ride dirt bikes that controls are important, and what we like is what we like. So it is valid that we're nerding out on levers. But let's talk about the experience of riding it.
Well, I mean, I feel like the video clip that we started off with just says exactly what, just Kyle's just giggling all day.
Yeah.
We could hear him giggling. Well, there was no motor, so we could just hear Kyle giggling all day.
I love a lot of horsepower. Like if I can have lots of power on tap, I normally ride a CR500. So that power on tap and the way that it built its power,
it doesn't build it. It's just there. It's always there. And it's always on the pipe. It's and the 500, I wouldn't ride it on the pipe. That'd be crazy. I would wear myself out all the time. But it's like this bike these bikes are just always on the pipe. They're always ready to go. Don't have to slip the clutch and build power, or it's just there. And the lack of rotating mass in the motor and everything, I feel was noticeable in moving the bike around side to side and just weaving around quickly. And the bike is all of the bikes are on the heavy side for the size.
Yep.
although not very much. And I don't know, are we giving away exactly what they weigh? Because we know exactly what they weigh.
I can't remember, but if you know, go. It doesn't matter. We
We have
weighed
it
them.
written down. So, but I know
Yeah.
that I was surprised that like it's not unreasonable at all. But
No, yeah,
for
they're in the wheelhouse.
yeah, so for what they weigh, like they are very that Varg especially is very flickable. Like
And it's always that weight. It's not like full tank of fuel and low tank of fuel. It's always that weight, and
Yeah.
that fuel tank sitting up high isn't there.
No. I feel like the weight is it feels like it's up high, but as soon as you ride the bike, and I mean, people always say this, like, oh, it's 280 pounds, but it doesn't feel like that when you're like, but it's a little different with the Vargo. Like, it doesn't feel. It feels a little heavy when you're going slow, but that power is just incredible.
Yeah, I agree. I know it's a cliche to say the idea that it doesn't feel like what it weighs, but in this case, I felt like that was true. Like once you get these bikes moving, I didn't like it. They didn't feel heavy to me.
No, I feel like the Storm-B felt the heaviest.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, definitely. I could say that.
But I mean, I feel really fortunate that we got to use the Ultra, the Storm, and the Varg to really compare. And like you like the Storm quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I started out on the Storm.
Yeah,
and you had mentioned that it was the least favorite of the three bikes.
Yeah,
and I had a blast on it right away. It was no drawbacks to me.
And I like the Ultra a lot better than the Storm.
Yeah, but I noticed, especially like both of the Surons compared to the Stark, the sound, like the sounds you heard when you rode it, the Surons sounded cheaper than the Stark. The Stark sounded like a solid machine that was well thought out and every little thing was taken care of. And the Suron stuff, not that it is, but it just sounded like you just hear things clunking and plastic, and like there was things that you heard other than the chain, because you're not going to get away from that. And it just the Stark just sounded more solid.
Yeah, and with the Storm-B, I like a couple of times I stopped and like, what is making this sound? And I was like, I thought it was like an upper shock bearing or something, but all the bearings were tight. It was fine. It was doing everything it was supposed to do. But the Varg, you're right. Like the Varg, you can hear like the chain, the tires. You can hear like
the motor whine.
Yeah. It has a cooling fan.
Yeah, we can talk about the noise issue or lack of issue. What it surprised me in both ends, which is it surprised me how quiet they were when we were all traveling. Like we were just putting along and we were having a conversation. We would not even stop. We'd just be talking as we're moving. And I thought that was fascinating and weird. But when I was filming and you guys were on it coming toward me, I could hear the bikes from a long way away, way further away than I thought. And it sounds like a swarm of bees coming, like a high pitched whine, like maybe a swarm of mosquitoes, like very high pitched whine. And I could hear it coming in the distance when you're on it,
Yeah, I remember. I think you and I were having a conversation about it, and like from quite a ways away, you could maybe it was while you were riding around in the pit there, like when you were like way over by the trees, we could still hear it.
Sounds like an RC car, loud RC car.
Yeah. And it's like, well, it's louder than a drone. Like you can hear a drone.
Yeah.
But it is. I feel like it's just because it's high pitched. So it is. It's not loud, but the sound seems to carry.
Yeah, yes, there is sound, but overall, I think it's safe to say that the electric bikes are going to change things of riding areas and complaints and how people perceive us. I think although they aren't silent, they're a lot better than what we currently have.
Yeah, and it's certainly less intrusive.
Silent but deadly.
No, I would argue, and there's lots of guys out there maybe watching this that want to hear an internal combustion engine, and we've all ridden them for so long, like it's just built into our DNA that we like those sounds and smells. But in the big picture, for the betterment of the sport or the longevity of the sport, maybe it's probably better that we're going to go electric. And I say we're going to go electric because I think this is the future, like it or not. This is where we're going. Tell me about the sound and smells. Internal combustion engine for each of you guys versus electric.
I mean, I feel like this is just a question of nostalgia, and I am not nostalgic at all. I don't care. I don't care at all.
Yeah.
Doesn't
When I heard about Altas and stuff, I just thought that's so cool. I want to try an electric bike. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm gonna miss my two-stroke because I love two-stroke, but I never thought I was gonna miss that. I just thought I can't wait to try an electric bike. I just want to be on two wheels, just having fun.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
we all
there's
agree in that regard. Like we're not traditionalist.
no, like dinosaurs are dead for a reason, and things come and things go, and there's people that hang on, and there's early adopters and whatnot, and like wherever the industry goes, I don't care. It's going to be driven by the industry is always going to be driven by people by an enthusiastic crowd that wants to go have fun, and there is there's no less fun factor because you don't have a noisy machine under you. It's a little different, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would refine that statement slightly, and I would say it's going to be defined by giving the consumers what they want.
Yeah.
And what you said is correct, which is I was having so much fun from the very beginning. Like the moment it started moving forward for the very first time, my mind was blown and I just couldn't get off it. Like I couldn't wait to ride it. I was so excited. And for me specifically, I like the Stark Varg. One, because it's a full-size bike. And also to what Kyle said, the fit and the finish and the overall package of the Stark Varg felt very, I don't know, just more refined than the Sur-Ron. The Sur-Ron and I hate to disrespect Sur-Ron, but it didn't feel as together. It felt cheaper, but that's because it is, and we have to assign price to that because it is cheaper. What's a Sur-Ron worth? And we'll talk Canadian dollars. Anyone know?
I don't know. I bet you someone in the comments could find out very, very quickly.
Yeah, if someone in the comments wants to throw that up, that would be super helpful. I'm guessing that a
Storm V versus
Sur-Ron,
a Varg.
you're getting into a Sur-Ron, probably the low end model, for probably like $4,000 maybe, and then you're
No,
probably going up
oh no, oh no.
more
They're
expensive.
not that cheap. They're not that
Oh
cheap.
wow, okay, I didn't know that. So
Yeah,
let's
like
see if anybody in the
yeah, somebody must be able to throw it up there.
Yeah, I'm sure Anthony can get us that price too. So anyway, what I'll say is about, I'm favoring the Stark Varg, but in Canadian dollars, the Stark Varg is 18,000 Canadian dollars, and that's a big number. Where
Keep in mind,
yeah, go ahead.
So Outlaw bought 50 of them right off the hop, and the price has gone up since Outlaw bought them. But Outlaw is offering them at the previous price because they locked into their. So if you have a dealership close to you that is on the ball with the electric stuff, you may be able to get it for the old price, which is significant. Stormby, $12,000.
Yeah, I'm seeing moto mining through up 8 to 10K. Now I don't know if that's USD or Canadian dollars, but I appreciate you pointing that out about Outlaw. That the fact that they bought them at a locked in price and they're probably offering those for sale at the lower, not increased price.
Yeah, yeah. I talked to I talked to them and they told me that because they bought so many at the previous price, they're able to be more competitive with the pricing. I mean, they're on it with the electric stuff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but the Stark Varg, me ranting about how it's like I liked it because of the fit and finish. That's $6,000 worth of fit and finish we're talking about. That's like,
yeah, but
you have to be well heeled.
But $12,000. I mean, like I'm a big fan of the Surons, but if I was going to buy a Suron, I would buy the Ultra B. I haven't ridden a Light B, but I think the Ultra B is where it's at because I'm not buying a Suron to replace my dirt bike. I'm buying a Suron to go to the store. I want a milk crate on it. I want to this is something that I feel like I don't have to wear a helmet riding and definitely should. That's what the Suron is. The Starkvarg, no. Like Starkvarg, totally different category.
It's a perfect segue to what would you use these for? Like if you were serious about purchasing it, you're saying like, oh, it feels like a toy, and it's not going to replace my dirt bike. What would make an electric motorcycle dirt bike replace your dirt bike? What's it going to take?
What do you think?
Ooh, if you're in an area where regulations are really tight and or you're indoor tracks and
Or if you live in a city
yeah,
and you don't have access to trails or a track.
yeah, exactly. There's going to be a lot of places, and the closer you get to the city, the more population density there is, the more chance that you're going to have those regulations and more population. So the chance that could grow quickly when people start to really get in with that, they're going to say, "Oh, well, I can still go have fun on my dirt bike. It's electric."
Yeah, that's a great point. And just for clarity for everyone who's watching, the three of us live in a place where we ride out of our house and we can ride as much anywhere we want to go, and there's very little public pressure. So
Nobody cares about the noise here.
no one cares. So I mean, we're not urban guys. So if we were, I would definitely be considering an electric bike. Like that would be high on my list of priorities because I would want to ride, and it's the sound of a internal combustion that's not allowing you to ride in an urban area.
Yeah.
One more segue. I think this is a super interesting topic. Chuck, you mentioned it. You want to go pick up some milk with your milk crate on the back and get the mail, and it doesn't feel so, and not wear a helmet. So you're telling me that you don't feel it feels like a toy, and yeah, Kyle is nodding as well. I have a story about that. Kyle knows what we're talking about, but let's talk about the idea that it feels like a toy.
And especially like the Surons, one of the things that come to my head was that, well, these Surons felt like a toy and the Stark Varg felt like a dirt bike. It didn't, the electric side of it, still the sounds and everything, just, I keep saying RC car, just reminds me of like a Traxxas RC car. But the Suron stuff, you said it's $6,000 worth of fit and finish, makes sense. But it felt like I was riding an RC bike versus an actual dirt bike.
Yeah, I feel the same way. The Suron to me is like, it's like my wife's 150. If when I want to go, if I only have one kid to pick up at school, I'm taking the 150. Like that's what we do. If we're going chasing cows, I like to be on the 150. It's small and light, and I can kind of pick it up if I need to, or it doesn't overheat. There's just no drama. It's convenient. The suspension, I'm gonna override the suspension before I override the motor. Any of my kids can ride it. It's just a play bike.
So I agree in Suron specifically because when you get on the Ultra B, which is the middle one, it's small. Like the percentage of the frame size is smaller, so it feels like a toy because it's smaller and narrow, and like it feels between a mountain bike and a small dirt bike. So that is what adds to it feeling like a toy. The Suron Storm B, which is one step up, and their largest model, which is a full-size dirt bike, which I don't think it is a full-size dirt bike exactly.
I'd say it's like a CRF 250F.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then the Stark Varg to me felt like a real dirt bike. The ergos and the seating position and everything felt real. So I didn't think of the Stark Varg as much as a toy, but I still had that feeling that it's not going to hurt you because there's no noise to give you any warning. So my prediction is that we're going to go through a period of time where these electric motorcycles, these dirt bikes, are going to hurt, maim, and kill uh, a whole group of people before this gets sorted out, because the Stark Varg has 80 horsepower. And if I'm a young idiot, I'm an old idiot right now, but if I was even younger, I'd be more idiotic. And we're keeping that on 80 just because we're insane and, but we're going to hurt ourselves. And one more story, and I'll get you guys to comment. We went riding to do some filming, and I was at the back on a combustion engine, the 23 Honda 250RX. And then these guys, Chuck, I think you were on the Stark Varg leading.
I don't know what story you're about to tell, so
I don't want to say so. I don't want to say the location of where we were, but when we were over to the west,
yeah,
when we went out for that day, with Mason was with us. Young Mason's 14; he came with us, and I think Chuck was on the Stark Varg when we pulled away. What were you riding there, Kyle?
I think that was right near the start, and I was on the Storm, the bigger Sur-Ron.
The Storm, right. And then Mason was on the Ultra B, the smaller bike.
That's how we started out that day.
Yeah, and I was watching you guys and reading your body language, and with Kyle, even with you, Chuck, it was like reckless abandon. Like we went down into some crazy ditch and went up this crazy thing, and I was just like, everyone was just like drunk on joy. And I could see it in your body language, and like the things that you guys were doing on the bikes is not a typical like when we're gonna, first go for a dirt bike ride. And then it was probably, I don't know, less than 5 minutes into the ride, Chuck departs off the ridge and goes swooping down into this big ravine super fast. And, Chuck's been riding the Stark Varg a lot more. Kyle's new on it. Mason's brand new on it. He hadn't really ridden it. And
he hadn't ridden it, but he did. He had already broken the fender off of it.
Yeah. I hope Mason's watching. If he's not, he's going to see this. But Kyle, you ate it hard, and I've never seen you eat it like that ever. Kyle can ride, and he's right. He's a lifer. He's been doing this for a long time. But what happened? Like, what you explain?
So my theory, because when some of these things happen, you don't fully remember what happened, but we had dropped down this hill, like you mentioned, and then at the bottom, kind of hooked to the right. And we were coming in pretty hot, and it was bumpy. So your tires are chattering. But I think what happened was that my mindset of the clutch overriding the throttle, like doesn't matter what the throttle's doing because I can just grab the clutch and kill all power. That doesn't happen on the electric bike. And I think that I was powering through my brakes, not knowing. I think I was on the throttle a little bit because you can't hear the engine. Like on my normal dirt bike, I can hear if I'm on the throttle a bit, but this you can't. And you're not thinking, you're just in the moment. And I think I was on the throttle too much. I blew a corner, and I picked the smallest bush of trees to stop myself in, which I thought worked really good. And I toppled over and whatever. But then that, what's his name, was behind me.
Mason.
Young Mason, sorry. Yes, Mason was behind me, and he sees this happen.
Oh, he was behind you?
Yeah, he was behind me.
Oh.
And so he sees this start to happen, and I don't know. He had smaller tires. So for one, he was going the same speed as us, but didn't have the same traction, I don't think. And also bouncing down this hill. And I'm pretty sure we even looked up and saw there was a rock, or there was a large bump.
There was a rock of
something closer to the bottom, which I think might have played into my fall. And then when Mason came down and all this happened, he might have had a bit of target fixation on what was happening with me as opposed to where he needed to go. But you don't know. But either way, he got crossed up and hit the ground much harder than I did. I came through unscathed, and I think he hit the ground pretty hard. And
He must have went over the bars.
he might have. Yeah, I didn't see it.
He did.
Yeah.
I saw the whole thing. Yeah. When I talked to him about the idea, what happened, he said he was going way too fast, and he saw you crash, and then he just panicked and froze and locked up both brakes, front and rear. So he locked the front and just went right over the bars and had a big get off. And he was pretty scraped up.
Yeah, he was a little
Anyway.
stiff for a little bit.
He did really
Yeah,
good
he
though.
was.
After a few minutes, he was back on the bike, and it was like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, no, credit to him for sure. And he's 14, so we love to see that.
Yeah, I thought we were
think,
going to have to do a little mouth to mouth, but it was okay.
Yeah, well, as soon as you threatened that, he was up on his feet.
Yeah.
We're going to take a very, very short break and come right back, guys.
Okay.
One evening late, the sun went down, the blazing fire was burning. Down the trail came a dirt bike rider, and he said, boys, I'm not turning. I'm heading for a land that's far away, beside the crystal fountain. So come with me and we'll go and see the big rock candy mountain. In the big rock candy mountains, there's a land that's fair and bright, where the filters grow on bushes, and you sleep out every night. Where the single track is empty, and the sun shines every day on the birds and the bees and the big fir trees, and the old rock pile makes the rider smile in the big rock candy mountain.
Big thanks to Tim McLeod. Tim McLeod sang that song, and I believe he is in the comments section right now.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway,
He's
thanks,
got
Tim.
nothing better to do besides shovel snow right now.
So I during the break, I wanted to talk about the idea of switching to EV and shedding all of the maintenance of an internal combustion engine. And thoughts. We'll let Kyle go first, and then Chuck, you can talk about it, and I'll just not even talk about this at all.
I'm wondering what the long term is going to be like. I haven't looked into what guys are dealing with the Altas, with engine maintenance, motor, not engine, with motor maintenance and gearbox issues, or if there is any, I don't know. But there is still components that can fail and that could require maintenance. Like, is there going to be dust getting into contacts, and now we're going to have high current issues because we have dirty contacts, or like, is there going to be things like that we have to be, is going to be new to us that we'll be taking care of? Like, we're not going to be doing valves and piston and rings and all that kind of stuff, but we still have our chain, and all of our bearings are all still there. But there is still components that inevitably will need some sort of maintenance. That's my thought.
As you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, you were a service manager.
Yes, I was.
And I think that's an excellent point. I mean, right away, I'm like, and I've been thinking about this a fair bit, $18,000 plus a regular bike, and talking in Canadian dollars, regular bike is around 12-ish, some a little less, some a little more. So you got about a $6,000 difference. But the Starkvarg battery, they're saying what it sounds like right now is that you should be able to go 250 charge cycles with zero degradation, and the expected practical life of the battery should be well in excess of 1,000 charge cycles. And we know that one charge cycle should get you almost as far as a tank on an enduro bike. So say 2 hours of practical riding, averaged out, less if you're riding moto, more if you're riding trails. So that's at 1,000 charge cycles at 2 hours per. Even if you only knock it down to 1 hour, one the life of one battery, or the life of one engine, if you want to think about it that way, is definitely more than 1,000 hours, which is nuts. Most bikes never reach that because the chassis falls apart. Or on a 4-stroke, a rod goes through a case and throw that in the garbage.
Yep.
Salvage the forks and the wheels. Mm-hmm. So to me, the cost analysis is hands down, bar none, EV way cheaper in the long run. And I think we're going to start seeing some problems. Like you said, whenever there's a new model that comes out, the dealerships start to see, oh, it's another one of these. Oh, it's another one of these. And we don't know what that'll be. It might be electronic, might be physical parts. But there is going to be a learning curve when it comes to servicing and repairing these. Mm-hmm. So hopefully the dealer, that's all part of the evolution of a new thing.
My only comment about that is, when I had the EM at my house for a month, I kept it in the shed, and it was just plugged in with an extension cord. And whenever I went out I just unplug it and go ride it around for an hour or two. Not even that long, just because it was a trials bike, so I did not have the physical stamina to ride a trials bike for 2 hours. Put it back in the shed, plug it in, and walk away. And I hate motorcycle maintenance. So for me, I'm looking forward to an EV situation where there's no oil changes and there's no engine work. And I also loved no air filters. Yeah. I loved your mathematics on the durability of an electric, of a battery and a motor, because it just blows when you put it in the context of a dirt bike in hours, it blows them away.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my comment.
There's a good question here. So what about the electric motor, magnets, windings, etc.? And I don't know about Starkvarg, but I know with the EMs back when I was dealing with those, I didn't ever have to change a motor, but through working at the dealership and doing a lot of tech support, we did encounter some people who had to change a motor, and you could just buy a whole new motor for $800. So I don't know what the motor on the EM is worth, or sorry, the Starkvarg. But electric motors, they last pretty long. I'm not an expert in that in that area, but I expect that there probably won't be much of a rebuild situation with those on a dealership level. Maybe a reman situation where pull the motor out, you get a core exchange or something. I would think
there's a lot of usable parts that would be for sure.
Yeah. Okay. While we're on mechanical, let's quickly talk about the experience we had with the batteries and riding these in a practical setting. So we all went riding. We're going to go for a trail ride. We're going to film, which is sort of a weird trail ride day. But what I noticed, and I think you guys will agree, is that the Surons, as the battery started to deplete in charge, and let's say when it got down to 65, you could tell they became softer than when we first started and they were at 100%. But what really surprised me, and I don't, Chuck, I'll let you talk about the technology here. I assume it's a controller. But what surprised me was the Starkvarg. Our goal was to run these things down to 0 because we wanted to truly see what would happen. And I think the Starkvarg was below 15% battery life, and it was still hitting with absolute shoulder jarring force at 15%. And I think we ran it to Kyle, you were on it. It was 2%, and it was still zooming around.
Yeah, you guys told me to run it around till it was dead, and so I kept doing that. And when it got down to around 2% or so, I think what it was doing was across the field, I would just hold it to the bar, and it would take off, and then it would go, and then it would act like you let off the throttle, wait a second, and then it would take off again, and then it would come slow down, and it just kept doing that when it got down to 2% or whatever it was.
At that point,
I found it fascinating. It's fascinating because it was two completely different experiences. And Chuck, you probably know, it's software and a controller but talk about that.
That is, I do not know a lot about that. That I think is probably more of a question for an electrical engineer or some type of electronics tech, because I don't know. Certainly would have something to do with the battery and the controller dealing with the power, basically with how much potential energy is left remaining in the battery, and probably having to do with some type of transformer thing between volts, watts, and amps. But I don't know. But you're 100% right. With the Surons, it would go down. It would be weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. But the Starkvarg was like a modern cordless drill, where it's just 100% until all of a sudden it stops.
Right.
Where it's very close to 100%. You can feel it a little bit. You start noticing, but like it's usable, dead.
Yeah, and it's like two completely different philosophies of approach to how they're going to give us the power. And what I liked about the Starkvarg is that from a practical perspective of actually riding the motorcycle, the Starkvarg had a lot. It seemed like a more practical situation for an EV of this generation.
Definitely.
So everyone's talking about. Oh, sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
It's not like you don't notice that the battery's going down. Like there's a big battery meter, right? Like on the phone, like, and it's a literal cell phone. Like you can make calls with it. But yeah, let's talk about the water thing.
Yeah, everyone's asking about water. They've been asking about water, and I have no clue. I don't know what to say about that.
They have a waterproof rating for the Starkvarg, and I can't remember what it is. I thought I had heard it, but I thought it was rated for some amount of submersion.
It must be.
I don't know.
It has to be.
Because you can ride it through puddles and all that stuff, so it has to have some sort of waterproof. And I just don't know. Didn't research how much waterproofing that is.
I'm sorry, but I'm totally distracted by Charlie True's comment asking about what you can do once the battery is dead, because because once a combustion dirt bike dies, somebody's gonna buy it. Well, I think maybe once the battery dies, people will take the engine out and put a combustion engine into it.
CR500.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of bigger questions about EVs in general.
It would be cool though if somebody made a kit to swap a combustion engine into a Starkvarg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
But sorry. But yeah, we can continue talking about the water.
Yes. So obviously they're going to be a waterproof case of some type, and if water gets in there, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's probably going to short it. Is that warranted? I mean, who knows?
I don't know either. I can only imagine what would happen if water gets into a lithium polymer battery.
Not good.
I'm pretty sure it would light on fire underwater. But I'm pretty sure, like you say, it has some type of a waterproof rating, like
IP something.
Yeah, and it's going to have some type of internal, like lithium polymer batteries are like safetied and relayed like out the wazoo because they have to be. Which, yeah, that's the possibility of a lithium polymer battery spontaneously combusting or combusting after getting into an impact situation, like very much fire.
Yeah. There, I think with, we're talking about what it's like to ride them, and we're leaving out the whole conversation about the bigger conversation about the future of electric and the, all the cons, because there's lots of cons. There's dangerous fires with the batteries. What's going to happen when the battery's done? Like, do you now own a useless, piece of junk? So I feel like my summary, at least at this point, is I would love to own a Starkvarg. Like, I really enjoyed that motorcycle, and Chuck knows I do not like things early or quickly. But that bike, if you could have left it at the house, I would have been super, super happy.
Yeah.
But $18,000 is out of reach of most people. And if you're going to spend $18,000 on this motorcycle, what Charlie True said in the comments is true. what is the residual? How are you going to sell a used electric motorcycle in after 3 years of use? Like, you have to be well heeled. You have to have lots of dough, and you can't be thinking about the money if you're going to own one of these motorcycles right now.
Well, right now, but we're so early in the industry, but because the expected battery life is so good, I think it's not as much of a financial, you know, oddity as most people think, because most people are not going to get 100 charge cycles out of the thing. You know, like that's 200 hours of riding, and yeah, there are guys out there that will put that type of hours on in a year or 2 or 3, but I don't, you know, even if you ride the bike for 3 years and put 400 hours on it, you're not even halfway through the life of the battery. So the value of the bike, people are going to look at the chassis and go like, okay, how are the linkage bearings? How are the spokes and the wheels? Like, I don't think that the battery, unless it's not at all what they're expecting, unless guys are really struggling with battery life, you know, and that's not an expected thing. I don't think that the battery is going to be an issue at all.
That's super interesting, because I never thought of it that way. And basically, what you're suggesting is that if you amortize this over the life of the actual practical life of this motorcycle,
Yeah,
it has more life than a traditional motorcycle.
the battery is gonna outlive 3 combustion engines.
Right. That's
Likely
very
the
interesting.
chassis.
Yeah.
And I mean like
Yeah.
full top bottom rebuilds, like 1,000. And realistically, if you take care of it, you could get 2,000 hours out of a battery. Like way beyond the capability or capacity of any combustion engine.
I think you're going to
Wow.
start to run into things with the chassis parts being worn out to the point of needing replacement, like big, like swing arm or stuff big that needs replacement in the chassis before you need that in, if everything works as they plan and we don't all of a sudden start seeing premature issues with batteries or whatever.
Yeah, like Kevin Redneck on Route, his bike has, I think, north of like 600 hours on it now, and it's like, it's clapped, like,
right.
It's worth nothing.
Right, because the chassis has just been beat to snot.
Yeah, and there is a real life possibility that these dart bargs, that the batteries will facilitate more than 2,000 hours of use.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So if you had to choose, you know, we've ridden the two Surons and the Stark Varg. What's your order of what would you like? Give us number 1, number 2, number 3, and why. Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh,
for what application though?
Yeah, you'll have to add that in. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my application, my type of riding is very little to no motocross track, but if I'm there, I'm probably going to ride the track. Mostly trail. I like my faster pace stuff, but I love getting technical and pushing myself to the breaking point. So that said, I think the Ultra B was at the bottom, and then the Storm B, and then the Stark Varg. That's just my opinion for where I would be riding it. Because for me, it would be only out on the trail. But where I live, I wouldn't be able to, bop around town or whatever. But yeah, I think for that type of stuff that I would be riding, my number one choice is going to be the Stark Varg for sure. And then in the more technical stuff, in the future, hopefully we figure something with some sort of a clutch and a foot brake.
You know, I think, man, like I'm definitely hung up on the clutch thing. If it had a clutch, like a real working clutch, then it would be a very different scenario, because I could take it out and ride it here in my local area, and I would do that. But since it doesn't, like I could see riding it on the moto track. I would enjoy it a lot on the motocross track, but I never do that. And when I think about loading up to go ride and, pay an entry fee at the motocross track, it's not something that I do unless I, for some reason, am there anyway. So I can't see myself buying a Stark Varg at the moment. It's not there yet. And I like to go out and ride, well, similar to you, like, we're out there riding sometimes, 6 hours, on a ride or more sometimes. And, sometimes we pack fuel along, and that is more important to me than the upsides of the Stark Varg. So I would not buy a Stormbee because I don't like the power to weight ratio. Because the Sur-Ron for me is in a play bike category, and if I want a play bike, I want a light play bike, and I want it that my wife and my kids can ride it too, and that would be the Sur-Ron Ultra B. So if I was to buy an electric bike right now, it would be an Ultra B.
Very interesting. Mine is easy. Stark Varg all day long, mostly because the controls are not an issue for me whatsoever. I could, we're eliminating the factor or variability of price, but I could have a Stark Varg sitting outside my house, and when I'm checking the cows or when I'm going down to see you, or just booting around the property and sort of go, just short rides, which less than an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours out checking fences and like electric all day. I would love to have that bike to do that. It's aggressive enough and it's big enough for me to feel comfortable on that bike.
It's
Whereas,
adjustable. You can make it
yeah,
whatever power you want.
yeah, the power is completely adjustable. But yeah, I would like this. The Stark Varg just blew me away. To go riding when we were gonna mount up and all go riding for the day, it's not gonna work, obviously, yet. In the future it may, but for me it would be a bike that would be in the stable for just I hop on it, no warm up, just go, come back, plug it back in, and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have a very short break, and then we're gonna come back, and I want to tell the story of how I felt the day that we rode together, and I was riding a combustion engine, and you guys were all on electric.
Okay.
Whoa, the star is here.
Yeah.
This one. So this picture or image that you're looking at right now is Dork in the Road, and Dork in the Road was with us. He is primarily a dual sport and adventure rider. He calls himself a dork and a noob. We invited him to come along Grisbait with us. We had a great time. He's a very smart gentleman, and he enjoys riding. This year in 2023, he's coming to our place, and we're putting on an event that we think is quite unique. What's happening is we're taking adventure riders and dual sport riders or street motorcyclists who do not have a lot of dirt experience. We're putting them on our dirt bike fleet, small bikes, 250s, and we are going to ride for 5 days and train and do some educational stuff. And what we're hoping to do is level up those people and give them completely change their perspective about riding off-road. Because what Dork said, his number one thing about coming with us and riding for 5 days on Grisbait was that his perspective completely changed about what a hill was, about what a rough trail was, what a downhill was. And I knew that was going to happen, providing he survived, which he did. He did an excellent job. So anyway, that's going to be late August. Excuse me. He's going to be with us, and that's the plan. Adventure, dual sport, street guys. We're going to put you guys on small dirt bikes, and we're going to teach you guys how to ride in the dirt. Excuse me, the plague. The only way to get into that is be on the newsletter. So sign up for the newsletter. We do all our ride stuff, all our announcements behind closed doors, only to our closed audience. So if you want to come along on one of these rides or adventures that we're always announcing, please sign up, because we'd love to have you guys come along. There's all kinds of guys in the comments right now that have ridden with us in the past, and they feel like our family. So anyway, sign up. Maybe you will come riding with us someday. Okay, last thing, and I'm not going to drone on and on. This short and sweet as possible. We went riding. We had Mason, Kyle, Chuck. You guys were all on electric bikes. I was on a 2023 Honda 250 RX, a cutting edge cross country race bike. And it didn't take but 20 minutes where I couldn't help but think I was riding something that came out of World War II. That's how it felt to me, because you guys were all together on this plane of existence where you're all in electric. And yeah, it was insane, because you guys you glide into a stop, we're all talking, and then Dallas shows up, ba 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 ba, and I'm idling, ba 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 ba, and the conversation stops because nobody can hear anything with my bike idling. So I kill my combustion engine. It's quiet. We have the conversation, plan whatever we're going to plan, and then you guys just go, okay, cool, and then bzzz, off you guys go, just like that, instantly.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh man, I gotta press the starter, and it's got to catch, and if I had a clutch, I'd have to pull the clutch in. What gear am I in? And you guys were already gone, and I'm just, the amount of time for me to get this combustion engine, it felt like I was like cranking the thing, and it was like
Yeah.
it really felt way different, way different than the experience that you guys were having. And it was just such a stark contrast. I had to do it. It was such a stark contrast that I couldn't help but think like I'm on something from World War II, and electric's coming, and there's no stopping it. I don't know what the big picture is. There's a bunch of arguments there about what's 50 years, 20 years, 30 years. There's all kinds of, that's a whole other conversation. But I felt like I was riding something from ancient times.
Did it feel like I remember when I got my first bike with electric start? It's my 300 XCW. And when you come to a stop on the trail, everybody with electric start shuts their bikes off.
Right.
And the guy with kickstart, just like, he's idling because he doesn't want to shut his bike off. We're yelling at each other's helmet, or like through our helmets. Is that what it felt like? Or like,
yeah, it's an excellent analogy, because I remember that time in dirt bike progression when guys were showing up with the electric start, and they were the minority, and they would get teased by the guys to get a real dirt bike or whatever. And then it flipped, where it was the majority of the guys had electric starts, and we would literally be stopping to talk every trail break just to torture the guy that had to kick.
yeah.
So I feel like, yeah, like we're going to go through this transition, and all the guys that are traditionalists and nostalgic are going to scream and yell, and they're going to scream, you'll have to pull this dirt bike from my dead cold ass cheeks. That's my Charlton Heston impression. Yeah, so that's how it feels. It's like we're going through a generational switch. And one last thing I'll say before we go, because we're over time for sure. We had the opportunity to bring these electric dirt bikes down to our very, very good friend and riding buddy, Bruce. Bruce is not 78, but I'll say he's 78, but he's at least 70, I think. And we said, we're coming down, we're bringing the future. He had no idea what was happening. We brought those bikes down. He threw a leg over it. This is a lifer dirt biker. He threw a leg over that motorcycle, and he told me when he came back that he never thought he would ever have that experience in his lifetime. And he was absolutely blown away. And he loved the Sur-Ron Ultra B. That was the bike for him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a crazy time. It's a crazy time in humanity and in dirt bikes, in the sense that there's a big technology shift coming.
What you were saying makes me think about, so like when I was doing my apprenticeship, I worked on a lot of vintage bikes, and throughout my life, like my uncles drove dirt bikes and whatnot. So when I was a kid, the stuff that I remember is, I mean, I was born in '87, but my uncles were riding bikes that were like from the '70s and the '80s, and the progression that happened between, say, 1973 and 1985, even up till close to 1990, that's often talked about as like the heyday of dirt bikes. And, you know, new things were coming out every year, and, you know, magazines were relevant because, you know, you'd like, what's Yamaha going to do this year? What's Kawasaki going to do to like up that? And like, oh man, liquid cooling, like what, like, and we may be at another point in history where 20, 30, 40 years ago, they're going to look back and be like, oh, that was the heyday. And that's when like progression really took off. Like that's a possibility.
Oh, without question. You know, you think of adding AI to these electric dirt bikes and what the capability of a processor could do to traction control and clutching and getting you exactly what you want. It's coming, and it's coming very quickly. And that idea slapped me in the face the weekend that we had those bikes. So I think we're good to go. Oh, Kyle, go ahead.
One more thing we never touched on it, and I was going to say something, was the jumping.
Oh yeah.
At the back of where we were riding, there was a couple of jumps there. I had the chance to use the Stark.
Let's do it super quick.
Stark bargain and jumping off the jumps. It just it felt very smooth off the takeoffs and very predictable, very controllable. It took a lot of the bad factors for me for jumping out of it. I just felt very comfortable right away jumping it.
Yeah. And that's built from the ground up to be a motocross bike. So, you know, that's another conversation. You know, we're not motocrossers, but that's aimed at the motocross crowd. So it makes sense that that's going to feel very comfortable and capable when it leaves the ground.
But it is actually a huge factor that when you crack the throttle, because there are no gears, that wheel spins up until it gets to top speed. So if you're doing an endo, if you're nose heavy and you crack the throttle, the nose just straightens out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Very confident.
The controls up here when you're in the air, I felt that the controls at my fingertips, like the rear brake when I was in the air, was much more easy for me to hit than my foot pedal, and that's just me not being a motocross rider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense that it would be fine motor skills in the air when it's already, for us, unnerving to be in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank everyone for showing up. We're always super flattered when people show up to join us when we're talking about these things. We find them fascinating and interesting, and we sort of live in this world, and hopefully you guys are benefiting somewhat. We're passing on information that's somewhat worthwhile. And Kyle, thanks for showing up. Kyle drove in from southern BC, sort of. And Chuck, thanks for hosting in the shop. All right, boys, until we see you guys again. Thanks, gents.
There's no clutch killing that power for you. And there's lots of power! Oh, thank Woohoo! Oh my lord! Oh, much power! Holy Oh boy, that was crazy.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is.